Hello, good afternoon, everybody. So today's session is one of our series of GIRI forums, and we're going to focus on checking procedures and try and answer the question, are your checking procedures fit for purpose? So before we get on with that, I'll just go through a few minor admin points. So the first one is that this session is being recorded. So Helena, who is on the call, we'll get the session started recording now. We've got a chat box function on here. Obviously, this is, I think this might be the first time that we've used WebEx, but we've got a chat box function that you should all be able to find. There's a little speech bubble icon. I'll open that chat box now and say hello. And there we go. And maybe everyone else can just say hello in there as well. And if you fancy putting down your name or who you are, what you do, that would be great. And it'll just give people a burst of information, an idea of who else is joining this session today. With the microphones, I think you are all muted anyway. Hopefully this session will be very interactive, so please do unmute yourself and talk. But please remember to turn it back off again so that we haven't got lots of noises of cups and things like that that interrupt the flow. Cameras, again, if you can have your camera on, that's great. It's really nice to be able to see each other. If your bandwidth is struggling, clearly just turn your camera off and that should help things a bit. What we're going to do today as well is we're going to use the chat box for talking to each other. And I'm also going to share a link in the chat box that you'll be able to click on, and we'll come on and I'll explain that to you in a little bit. The final thing is, if you have any problems, Helena, who's on the call and I think is down as press comms or GIRI host, if you send her a private message, she'll hopefully be able to help you if you've got any IT problems. And if you do drop out, please just rejoin at the same link that you used this time, and we'll be able to let you back in and you can just pick up the session where it was. So the agenda for today is we'll have a quick update on previous forums, a quick GIRI update, and then we're going to focus on this question about checking procedures, and in particular think about who should own checking procedures and how do they actually impact on error reduction. So we'll do some group exercises. I'll talk about this concept of build it in your brain, which is one of our key messages that we try and hammer home to site supervisors and managers. And then we'll try and produce a spectrum of error prevention measures. So we understand how these different measures maybe compare to each other. And then have a group discussion at the end to look at how our ITPs actually prevent error, or do they prevent error? And then we'll have a sum up at the end. So what I'd like to do now is I will please pass on to Ed. So I'll stop sharing and then reshare in a moment. So Ed, over to you, please.
Hello, everyone. Sorry, are you going, Nick, are you going to put the slides up? Yes, so everyone can see me. Hello. I'm sure I don't know many people around here. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Ed McCann. I'm a Director of Expedition Engineering, and I'm currently a Vice President at the ICE. And I was one of the people who set up GIRI in the first place, and so hence the reason for me participating in this call. You will probably have seen by now the very sad news that we've had that Tom Barton, who is, well, he helped do the original research and has been the active face of GIRI for the last 4 or 5 years, sadly passed away 2 weeks ago, which was a great shock to all of us. And for those of you who didn't know Tom, he had a 40-year career, first with John Molam and then with Sir Robert McAlpine, and he was responsible for, by the end of his career, he was doing projects that included the Millennium Dome and the Millennium Bridge, and he started off on the NatWest Tower, so he was a proper construction gent through and through. And I invited him to help us with the research project about 5 or 6 years ago now, where we started looking at this question of error in construction, because I was looking for someone with impeccable credentials who contractors could trust and who would deeply understand the industry. And so he'd retired and he said to me, look, Ed, I can only give up half a day a week. And it ended up being an entire second life for him. So it's a huge loss to us, and I believe to the industry, that Tom passed far too young. But we know for sure that the GIRI board know that he was so committed to this whole agenda of getting error out of construction that he would want us to carry on and with GIRI, and to make it a great success for the industry. And so for that reason, we've decided to continue directly with this program of webinars and all the other activities that GIRI are doing. And so if you click on now, I'll give you a little bit of background to GIRI. I'm not going to take very long because I'm sure a lot of you are well aware of this, but the whole GIRI initiative started in a series of discussions at the Institution of Civil Engineers Best Practice Panel around the idea of, with a question really, which is just wondering just how much money was wasted because of what we spend on error. And when we started looking at it, we found there wasn't an easy answer. There wasn't a nice convenient publication that said UK construction wastes this much money because of errors that it makes that it didn't need to make. And so we put together a research project, half funded by CITB and half funded by a whole gang of construction companies, including people like Sir Robert McAlpine's, Barclays, Costains, and many others, to undertake what was a fairly serious piece of research. Took about six to 9 months to do, in online surveys, lots of academic sort of literature reviews, many workshops and so on. And we came to the conclusion, which by now I'm sure you're aware of, that somewhere in the order of 20% of all project costs seen by clients are actually associated with error. And the range is from about 10% up to about 30%, depending on the type of project you're involved with highly repetitive, simple activities down at the lower end and more complex operations with lots of interactions up at the top end. But on average, somewhere in the order of 20%, which broadly speaking corresponds to about £20 billion per annum on UK construction, which is waste because of error. And when we finished the research, everyone sitting around the table thought that this was a significant enough issue that we as an industry needed to and should do something about it, and set up the Get It Right initiative, a not-for-profit organisation, which you are all part of, I hope. And so that's the origins of it. And as you can see here, what we found was that there were 4 categories of cost that were associated with error, 5% being direct costs of error, 7% on indirect costs of error, 6% on unrecorded process waste, and about 3% on latent defects. And it's for those of you who don't speak to your CEOs very often, once we started having conversations like this with CEOs of construction companies who thought a 2% profit was great news, the reaction we got from them was profound, in the sense they were going, oh my God, we're wasting this much on this. If this is really true, we really need to do something about it, which is one of the reasons there's been such a positive uptake from companies around this subject. Do you want to move on to the next one, Nick? Yeah. The key thing for us in this was that this is a classic iceberg problem, in that the relatively small amount of this was properly visible. The stuff that people actually count and where they actually track money is tiny in proportion to the total cost. Most of the cost is buried in rates that tier 2s and 3s embed, on the assumption that they'll end up doing things 2 and sometimes 3 times. And so it's not obvious if you're sitting as a client that this waste exists. The next slide shows the top 10 causes of error. So when we did this work, we tried to understand where was the problem, why was error happening. And I confess I got a bit of an education when we started looking at this, because I originally thought it was going to turn out to be the case that we had very rubbish bricklayers who couldn't literally place a brick on top of another brick without messing it up. I thought it would be a skills problem, and it turned out that it wasn't really, it certainly wasn't primarily a trade skills problem. If it was a skills problem, it was actually in the planning and design phases that the biggest problem existed. And 6 out of the top 10 causes of error are associated with planning and design, or rather poor planning and incomplete design. But there were all sorts of issues which, again, are all available in the research reports that were done as associated with this. We launched GIRI in early June 2017, and of course, within a matter of weeks, we had the Grenfell Tower disaster, and that created an entirely different sort of perspective on it. We'd been talking about this as primarily a financial issue, and all of a sudden we were confronted with the tragic sort of human life consequences of error in construction. And those of you, and I know Tom followed this very, very carefully, but if you follow the transcripts and the stuff that's coming out of Grenfell, it is literally a catalogue of error upon error upon error made by just about everybody involved in the entire process, from those procuring it right the way through to the people installing fire breaks and signing off on stuff. And if ever we needed a terrible example of what happens when we really don't get it right, then Grenfell was there for us. And Dame Judith Hackett has made this quote, which was particularly Tom was particularly fond of, and said, any part of this sector who thinks they can survive by standing still or defending their current territory is sadly mistaken. And again, many of you will be seeing the sort of wall of regulation that is being lined up for the industry to deal with over the next few years in order to prevent particularly this sort of stuff. Strategic aim of GIRI is simple. It's to improve construction productivity and quality by eliminating error. And these webinars are part of that. There are many of them. We've had 4 recently. They're on the screen: managing and motivating staff under COVID-19, behaviours to prevent errors, creating and maintaining a positive culture, and working with a changing supply chain. And that leads us on to today's, which Nick is going to take you through. This is focused on checking procedures and are they fit for purpose. I'll hand back to Nick now. I'm going to stay on the call all the way through and listen to the debate, and then I'll share some sort of sum up observations at the end, if you don't mind. But apart from that, over to you, Nick.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Ed. Yeah, thank you. So we are going to try and do something a bit different and a bit new on today's webinar. We're going to use a bit of software called Mural, which is basically a massive sheet of paper that we can all write on at the same time. And the idea with this is, rather than 40 of us taking it in turns to say one thing, we can actually capture lots more information quickly and start to really draw on that wealth of experience that we've got in the meeting. So I will share my screen now and show you what this is. So here we go. Here's my screen. You can see. So you can see my cursor moving around. And this thing here is basically a huge sheet of paper about the size of a house. And down in the bottom corner, there's a little diagram that shows what we're looking at. So if I zoom in on this corner up here, you can see that this diagram shows me where I'm looking. Now, the first thing we're going to do is just to try and get you all using this software. If it doesn't work for you, if your computer blocks it, don't worry, you'll still be involved fully. We'll put you into breakout groups where you can talk, but this is just to try and get us interacting even more. So the first thing I'd like you to do, please, when I share a link with you in a moment, is just type in your name so that we know who you are, and then you will appear. You'll pop into this magical world here, and you'll be given a little icon down at the bottom of the screen. So you can see that someone has already turned up and been turned into a blue pig. So when you come into this screen, you can move it around. If you've got a scrolly thing on your mouse, you can zoom in and out with that. If not, there's this little slider down here, which is a zoom in and out button. And if you use this hand cursor, that means you can grab the page and move it around. And you can go to the bit you want to go to. So what I'll ask you all to do first is to come up to this top corner of the page here, where there's a map of the world. And then make sure you're not clicked on hand. And what I'd like you to do is choose one of these little labels, click on it, and just type in the name of the favourite job you've ever worked on. What was the best job you've worked on? So I'm going to say hospital building. And that was in Africa. So I'm going to put that over in Sierra Leone where I was doing that job. So I've put on there the name of the job that was my favourite ever job. So could you all please come and grab one of these, click on it, type in what the job was, and then put that on the world map or on the UK map just to show where it was. So that'll give us a taste of where you've all worked. The next thing I'd ask you to do straight after that is come over here to this box and put a sticky note on. Annotate the shared content. Okay. The next thing I'd like you to do is to come over here, and I don't know what's happened come over here and put a sticky note on this screen. And the way you do that is you can either double click and a sticky note comes up, or you can use this icon. So the picture like a sticky note, you see that on the side of the screen, press that and grab a sticky note, whatever color you want, and put it on here. Now, clearly, this is just to get everyone learning how to use this bit of software. So what's your favorite food? I'm going to say hot dog. There we go. Okay, so what that will mean is that everyone in the first couple of minutes will have stuck a name tag saying their favourite job and where it is in the world, and will have put on this sheet here what their favourite food is. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to invite you all in the chat box that we've already used. So I'm going to send you a link, copy that link, and I will put that in the chat box now. So here we go. So that is now in the chat box. So can everyone please go to the chat box, click on that link, and we should see everyone start to appear in Mural. And then once you've done that, I'll give you about 4 minutes to write down where your favourite job was and what your favourite food is. And then we'll get on with the next part of the session. So if anyone's having a problem, just shout out and we can hopefully talk you through if there's anything else you want to know about that. I can see lots of you are in there.
It's not working for me.
Okay. If you're not getting in, don't worry. It'll only be about 2 minutes, and then we'll be on to the next bit, and we'll have a group chat anyway. And what I'll do is I'll share the screen, and it'll just be a way of us collecting our outputs. Are you on a laptop, or is it on an iPad or something?
Laptop.
Okay. Oh, it normally. I'm not sure what the problem is. It might be worth just trying the link one more time. I don't know if is it telling you it's blocked.
No.
Is it opened in another window? It might be worth just checking if there are any other windows.
Yes, it does.
There we go. Okay, so if you click to that other window, it should work. There we go. So there's a map of the UK. So if it's something in the UK, you can put it on the bigger map because I should imagine they'll be all a lot close together. But let's have a look at what some of these projects are that people have been working on. Okay, big bridge. So certainly sounds big. So we're getting a spread all over the world there. Several big jobs in it looks like China and Asia, and unsurprisingly quite a lot in London. Yeah, Crossrail, SAS camp, interesting one. Okay, so we've just got another minute, and let's see what people's favourite foods are as well. Chicken shawarma, great. Chinese pizza, so a few people liking pizza. Good, okay. Right, brilliant. Well, thank you, everybody. I can see it looks like, I don't know if all of you, but certainly an awful lot of you have managed to get that software working. So hopefully this will be quite a useful tool for us to be able to get lots of information captured today. So what I'm going to do is you can either watch the presentation by coming back into WebEx, or you can stay in the mural board. But what I'm going to do in the mural board is I'm going to do a thing called summon you. So I will now grab you all and you will look at what I want you to look at. So there we go. So the next bit of this workshop, what I want to do is to try and get a capture of all of the different ways that we currently check for errors or prevent errors from happening. So this is basically a brain dump of all our different procedures. So in a moment, we're going to put you into breakout groups. So Helena will put you into 6 different breakout groups. That will all automatically happen. And what that will mean is that there'll be a handful of you, say 4 or 5 probably, who can all talk to each other. So I'm going to give you 6 minutes in those rooms to talk to each other. And when you're talking, can you please use this board? So I'll just zoom out to show you what I'm looking at. Use this board, and in the appropriate box, just use sticky notes to capture all of the different procedures, checking processes that you use. And you'll see that there's a box for group 1, there's a box down here for group 2, another one for group 3. So whatever group it says you're in, please go to that group, talk with those people, and put your sticky notes into the appropriate box. Welcome back, everybody. So I've enjoyed watching a vast amount of information suddenly appearing on the screen there. So what I'm going to do is I've sucked up all of that information that you've put into your different groups and put it into one box at the bottom. So I will summon you all so that you're all looking at it. And I'll also share screen. So anyone who's not able to see the mural board can see what I'm looking at. So let me just share that as well. There we go, share. So hopefully everyone can see now this consolidated results. I can see quite a few of you still flying around on the screen. So let's try and pick out some of these. We've got a few mentions of BIM software, field view. So we've certainly got a technical element to this. Let's have a look at what else we've got. Evidence, design reviews, photographs, audits. So it sounds like we've got a mixture. We've got some technical things like check sheets, but we've also got other methods such as competence and education and training. So things that are less directly linked to particular errors, but more maybe that soft skills bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly, for about 2 minutes, talk about what we do with the supervisors and managers when we are training them in the GIRI training. So let me summon you back up to here. So one of the key phrases that came out really powerfully from all of the GIRI research was, we always have time to put it right, but we never have time to get it right. So what this is telling us is that people always feel in a rush. And when people are in a rush, they're not going to necessarily do the things they need to do to prevent error. Now, what we hammer home with the supervisors and managers is this idea of build it in your brain. So what we mean by this is, if you're about to undertake any task and you can't close your eyes and visualize what it looks like that you're actually doing, then it's very unlikely that you're going to do it without making an error. If you can't visualize, where the next individual brick goes, or where the next 3 bits of steel go, or whatever it is, if you don't know what it's going to be like when you finish, the chances are you're going to have some errors. And we're calling this build it in your brain. And it's really important that we have this common language. Now, the other thing that came out from the GIRI research was that pretty much every single employer and company said they wanted people to stop before there was an error. When we started training this, we really ran into the buffers, because the moment we used the word stop, a couple of things happened. Firstly, all subcontractors were immediately saying, I can't say stop. If I say stop, I don't get paid. There are contractual implications of using the word stop that mean people can't do it. The second thing is we have spent 30 years training people to say stop for safety. And what we can't do is risk a boy who cries wolf type scenario where people are saying stop for non-safety issues, which then means that on the rare occasion that you do have to stop for safety, it's ignored. So the word stop was a problem. And what we found is that the solution to this is actually not to say stop at all. What we do is we press pause. We press pause to avoid error. So what we hammer home to site supervisors and managers is build it in your brain. And if you can't build it in your brain, then press pause. And pressing pause is a positive thing. You only press pause in order to press play again. It's less confrontational. It's not confused with safety, and it's a common language. So what we want is to hear this language on construction sites. This is what we want to have as common language that GIRI is embedding. Okay, so that's what we teach on the Supervisor and Managers course. What we're going to do now is I'd like you to come back to the group that you were working in. So let's have a look at group 1 here. And what I want you to do is think about all of the different processes you've listed, and then ask yourself a question. Is this proactive or reactive? Now, what we mean by that is something that's reactive is after the error has happened, you're looking for the error. So you're trying to identify an error. So an inspection at handover is completely reactive. That is, after the errors have been made, you're trying to find them. The opposite end of that spectrum is something that is completely proactive. So that is trying to prevent the error from ever happening. And the more in advance of the error it is, the more proactive it is. So what we'll do is we'll put you back into your groups for another 5 minutes this time, please, Helena. So if you can go back into your groups, go back to your row, so group 1 up here, group 2 down here, and start using this scale. And literally click on one of these. I'll move it just to show you. And you put it where it is, whether it's completely reactive, proactive, or somewhere in the middle. And we'll see what you think of your current procedures. Welcome back, everybody. So I am just collating all of your answers onto the summary sheet at the bottom. So, and then we can have a look and see what we all collectively think in terms of what is proactive and what is reactive that we can do to prevent these errors. I can see a lot of you still flying about the board. Okay, let me just grab the last few of them there. There we go. Put those together. All right, we're getting there. Brilliant. Okay, and I will summon you all down to the bottom of the board, and we'll see what we've got. Okay, right, so hopefully you can see the board, and whether you're looking in Mural or on WebEx, you can still see the same thing. So let's have a look at the left-hand side of this spectrum, which is what we think of as reactive. So this is the stuff that's after the error is made, how we're going to spot it. So we've got things like carrying out testing, snagging software, MAFs. I'm not, what's an MAF? Can someone shout out and tell me what that is?
Material acceptance forms.
Ah, right, yeah, thank you. Yeah, we've got inspections, quality audit, work inspection record, a pre-start audit, photographs, an NCR database. Okay, so that's all stuff that is checking for errors after the error's actually been made. We then sort of move to the right a bit. So these are a bit less reactive. So we've got things like validation and verification, checklists, ITPs, stupid question asking. Okay, interesting. Audits, clerk of work inspections, fresh eye reviews. Let's move over to the right a bit more. We've got, so this is things that are a bit more proactive. Got what good looks like examples, okay? Checking drawings, right? Checking documents, checking calculations, fresh eye reviews, supervisor walkabouts, education and training, computer models. And then let's go all the way to the right-hand side. So this is what we consider the really proactive area. So we've got things like build the job day. Can someone shout out what they mean by that? What's build the job day?
It's building it, planning on how you're going to build it before you start.
Oh, okay. So that's a workshop with the whole team, is it?
Yeah.
Great. Okay. And have you used those? Have you got examples of those in practice?
Yeah.
Okay, good. We've got training, method stagements, is that? NCR reporting tools. Interestingly, ITPs come up in everyone, so it sounds like people have different perspectives on what an ITP does. Supply chain evaluation, okay, quality inductions, pre-start meetings, pre-start questionnaires. Okay, so what's interesting here is that we have identified hundreds of different ways that we have procedures to help prevent error, but actually they're doing different things. Some of them are checking for error afterwards, some are shaping the way we work. And so my question is, first off, which of these should we be doing more of? So let's use the chat box for this. Anyone, if everyone can open the chat box, can anyone just type in, or everyone type in, the one thing, if you could say there's one thing we should do more of, just type it into that box, please, now, and we'll see what everyone thinks. What is the one thing we should do more of? Check the checker, proactive, check before we build. And if you want to put some sticky notes on the mural board as well, we can stick them in this box here. So I'll start typing some in as well. Understanding requirements, okay, yeah. Plan, a big one for GIRI there. Detailed inspection and test plans produced and approved prior to starting works. Pick up defects in week 1 and then get feedback. That's a very interesting thing. How do we do feedback? We focus a lot on that in the training. Time to plan the construction before starting, so we're back to time. A readiness review, okay. So if you want, if you could type those into the box on mural with a sticky note, that will mean that we've captured all of that, and I can then share this sheet with everyone after. Okay, so now let's look at the opposite of that and ask the different question. In order to do more of what we know we should be doing, we probably need more time. So that would suggest that we need to stop doing something. So my question is, what should we be doing less of? So in that box, can everyone just put, what one thing do you think we should be doing less of? Let's see. We've got relying on contractors. Relying on contractors' own works, or is it own designs? Self-certification. Can someone shout out and just mention why they've said that about self-certification?
It's about allowing subcontractors to self-certify their works.
Okay. Hi, Mike. I didn't know that was you. So, why should we be doing less of that?
Because if we continue allowing them to self-certify and they're not doing all the appropriate checks, by the time we find there's an error, it's too late to do anything about it.
Oh, okay, interesting. So it's not necessarily that they're not finding the errors, but you're saying that they're on the wrong end of that spectrum of proactive to reactive.
Yeah.
Okay, really interesting. Great. I like that one. Panicking. Yeah, that's a good one. We should be doing less panicking. And what about ticking boxes? Who's put ticking boxes? Maybe you could just expand on what you mean by that.
That was me, actually. I was putting my 2 penneth in there.
Oh, okay,
Yes.
all right.
Just ticking boxes without thinking about the implications of them, I think. Just
Okay.
saying you've done things without actually doing them properly.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Minimizing designer input. I saw someone had put that there. Does someone want to comment on that idea of minimizing designer input fee? Who said that? All right. Is that related to the value engineering? Maybe whoever put value engineering can comment on the impact of value engineering on quality. Maybe we could explore what you mean by that.
Yeah, that was me, Nick. We spend our life fiddling about with the edges. We don't get a design complete, and we keep playing with it. So no wonder we don't know what we're building. And that's a key output I know of the back end of Grenfell as well. And one of the sort of let's hope they don't muddy that water too much, because that's really important in my head. We've got a fixed design.
Okay, fixed design. Anyone any thoughts on that? Any sort of practical implications of that? Maybe anyone got a different opinion or want to expand on how that feels for them, trying to minimize design changes?
One of the best jobs I worked on when I graduated was a proper design and construct job, where we had to, as the consultant, fully design the bridge to full detail design, did the proper bills of quantities, and had the design fully locked down before the contractors tendered on all that detailed information. And I think that job went really well. And even when the contractor did apply a value engineering solution, they could do that in the knowledge of exactly what the backdrop of the project was.
Okay. Great. Okay, so that's really reinforcing that idea that getting the design done before you build it is really a very logical way to work. I think we've got some raised hands. So, Paul, did you have your hand up?
I did. What Mike Napier said just now about self-certification has a sort of echo with passing responsibility down the chain to other people, and that's going to be relevant to Grenfell inquiry conclusions, I think, because from what we've seen from the evidence that has been given so far by lots of different parties, everybody's saying, oh, that was somebody else's job to do that. And in contractual terms, lots of bodies, firms pass responsibility to somebody else, and they think that they have divested themselves of responsibility for whatever happens subsequently.
Interesting. Yeah, so this idea of can you transfer a risk is
contractual. The lawyers and maybe even the quantity surveyors will say that you can, but when something goes wrong, it's everybody's problem then, and it's not just the person way down the chain who's made the mistake. It's everyone's problem then to solve, and you haven't done yourself any good. So that's my point there.
Yeah, really interesting. Okay, thank you for that, Paul. Right, well, we're approaching the end now. What I'll ask you to do, please, is as we finish off, it would be great if you could just stick some notes in those boxes at the bottom saying how you found this workshop, what did you think of it, and any comments as to how workshops like this or the webinars could be improved in the future would be really, really useful, so that we can make them better for you next time. So what I'll do now is I will stop sharing the screen, and I will ask Ed if he would like to make any observations and maybe close up for us. So Ed, back to you, please. We've got Ed there. Are you there, Ed? Have we? Oh, there we go. I can see you coming back. Brilliant.
Yeah, just demonstrating my complete incapacity with the technology. Yes, well, look, thank you. Hopefully that's been useful. I see there's a lot of activity there a lot of common views as well. And I'm just struck, I mean, by an observation I would make and leave you with is how significant the behavioural dimension of all this is compared to the procedural. There's this sort of reaction against the paperwork and trying to get into the heads of the people who are doing what they're doing, and the absolute critical importance of thinking your way through this problem rather than filling in pieces of paper. And the other observation in terms of how do we do this, or rather it's a question to leave you with, and it's something perhaps we can return to in another webinar, is that what I'm always astonished by whenever we do these sorts of things, we run these workshops, is how much people basically know the answers. Do you know what I mean? It's like all of you lot are sitting around here and you've got years and years of experience and you kind of know what the problems are. You write them down on the post-it notes, and we've got this great sort of like body of shared interpretation, understanding, and, if you like, insight into it. Yet we seem to really struggle to actually turn all of that insight, understanding, and knowledge into the positive change, consistent, positive, progressive change that I'm sure we all want in the industry. And so I think I'd I suppose, leave you with a challenge to reflect on, if we know so much, why do we keep making the same mistakes? What is it that is stopping us making the change that will really make the difference in terms of our organisations and our own projects and the industry at large? And because I think if you as a group can get your thoughts together, we can find a voice for them in a sort of coherent way through GIRI into the upper echelons of the industry. So if we can find a silver bullet or a series of silver bullets out of that combined insight that you all have, then I'd really like to hear about it, because I think there is an opportunity for us as a group, given that we represent, you know, thousands and thousands of people, to actually put that out there as something coherent. But it will require a bit of thought about what exactly it is. If you, so I'll leave you, there's a little suggestion for you. If you'd like to drop us a line afterwards, if you send it to Helena, she'll make sure I get it. But if you had a paragraph to direct to your CEO, imagine that group of people called CEOs, and that killer paragraph that says, do this, focus on this, and we'll turn the dials for industry. I'll leave that little invitation to you out there with a promise that if we get anything out of that, then we'll do our best to get it to the CEOs for a conversation, maybe at the CLC or the ICG or one of these sort of groups. Anyway, so the only other thing to say from my perspective, Nick, is the next. Are you going to tell them about the next webinar? So I'll shut down and say thank you very much for participating. I hope it was useful, and I hope to see you again on more of these in the future. And the next event is on the 16th of November, and it's avoiding error through better systems and procedures. And so, do you need to say anything more on that, Nick, or shall I call it quits there?
That's fine from me. So I will let you have the final word, if that's okay. Thanks, Ed.
Well, the final word is have a great day, and look forward to seeing you next time.